those videos and recorded those conversations were federally charged with crimes. And we turned them into the bad guys. We turned them into the people, and the poor victim was Planned Parenthood. But in the face of all that, when this was going on, that only 28 Republicans in the U.S. Congress, out of 265 or whatever the heck it was, 28, 10% were willing to put their name on a piece of paper to their elected leader among their own ranks and say, we're not going to vote for a budget that would fund something that is this reprehensible, in only 1 in 10 Republicans. Now I'm saying Republicans because here's the thing. In this room there are Republicans and there are Democrats. And there are independents and there's libertarians and there's whatever the case might be. There's a variety of different political ideologies. The issue of life is not a political issue, should not be a political issue, should not be a determinant as to whether someone's in this party or not. It should be something supported by everyone. But it's not. It's not. And there are many reasons people worry about where we are. They worry about what's happened to America. They say we've lost our way. We're losing our sight. We're forgetting these Judeo-Christian principles upon which this nation was founded. The very principles that make us the greatest nation on earth. Not only now, but in the history of humanity. How blessed we are to live in the United States of America in the 21st century. But we didn't get here by accident. We're not going to stay here on autopilot. We're here because of these same Judeo-Christian principles that inform our thought process, as they did our founders, who recognized that we were endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that these do include the right to life, period. That's something that we should not forget. So when we see that 10% of elected Republicans, we realize the party doesn't matter as it relates to this issue clearly. It really doesn't. What's critical is that you find the man or the woman that will fight for the values that those of you in this room hold. And you would not be in this room on a Sunday afternoon if you did not have respect for our Creator, if you did not have respect for our Savior Jesus Christ, if you did not have respect for the unborn, you would not be in this room. But you've chosen to be here on a stunningly beautiful day when you could have been doing something else, because these things matter to you. How much do they matter to you? Do they matter enough to you to be informed to the degree that you know where people stand? And I will tell you right now, your job is to do the homework. But there are people running as Republicans right now asking to serve you in Frankfurt who do not believe in the support of human life. You should do better than that. You should. And I don't care what party they run under. You don't need to go check a box. Do your homework. Be more informed than that. I would encourage you strongly. Please. I want to speak again to the young people here a bit. I want to encourage you to be bold. I want to encourage you to have a strength of conviction, in a sense of urgency, in a sense of strength, the likes of which our society increasingly tells young people and old people alike is somehow off-putting. The irony is the people who are the most bold are the people who truly are looking to undermine the very pillars of our society. Those of faith, those of moral character, are increasingly being told that's kind of a little old-fashioned, that's awfully personal, that's a little bit insensitive, that's some kind of a phobe. I can't even keep up with all the phobes that exist now, literally. I mean, anytime anyone on the left dislikes something, some other phobe becomes a part of our vernacular, and we now all have to be careful not to be that kind of a phobe. Seriously, come on, stop it with that nonsense. I mean, there is truth to the fact that there is hatred, there is racism, there is divisiveness. No question, there is even now, there has been since the dawn of time, there has been since the Garden of Eden. When sin entered into this world, there became a path down which we've gone that frankly has not ended well for humanity. It's not progressing well in many respects. But our job is to stand firm against that. Our job is to be a counterpoint to that. Our job as parents, our job as people in the faith-based community and non-faith-based community, as civic leaders, as political leaders, our job is to be, as it was noted in the book of Ezekiel, known to many of you, the watchman on the wall. Think about this. We see what's coming. We're here. We're gathered here because we see it. We see this degradation in our society. But as was noted then, I would encourage us to be reminded of again, and that is that the watchman who sees what's coming and doesn't sound the alarm is culpable. Period. It's on us. So whether you are a parent, whether you're a Sunday school teacher, whether you're teaching catechism, whether you're in the pulpit, whether you're in the CEO's position, whether you're an elected official, whatever, you're a scout leader, I don't know, whatever your role might be. If you find a coach, a teacher, anyone who is pouring into the lives of young people, if you are not willing to be bold and unapologetic about the values and the principles, I'm not asking you to proselytize at every turn. For crying out loud, in this room I would bet there's any number of differentiations of denominational belief on any number of things. We have Protestants, we have Catholics, and among even those we have so many different people who like music in church and people who don't like music in church, and we have people who want things in Latin and want them in English. We got all of it. It doesn't matter. You think God cares about that? We spend more time fighting amongst ourselves about things that we largely came up with on our own. And we forget about the fact that there are certain overarching truths and things that matter, not the least of which is the support for human life. Let's think about the things that unite us. Think about our state motto. There's nothing right over here on this flag. I mean, seriously, I'm going to hold this thing up. You guys can hear me. I got 9 kids. Look at this. I mean, united we stand, divided we fall. This is our state. Is that we often amongst ourselves as people of faith and people who do respect God and respect others and who do our best in our own imperfect ways to live by the golden rule, we are often the most divisive among ourselves. And we will fight with ourselves and be divided over things that don't matter to the extent that we forget about the things that do matter. Shame on us. So for you young people in this room, be bold. Be bold, but be informed. Be able to articulate why you believe what you believe. Don't simply, well, my parents said X, or their parents said X, or my whatever tells me X. Why do you believe what you believe? The irony between liberals who are very vociferous in their opinions and their belief, and they will wear people down. In Washington, Lord knows we've seen this of late, and the nastiness and the silliness has become to the point that it's almost off-putting. We don't even want to pay attention to it. But it affects real and important and significant things. But here's the thing about liberals. Liberalism often is driven by emotion. It's not driven by facts or logic. It's not driven by financial reality or overarching truths and things of eternal consequence. It's not. It's driven by the emotion in the here and the now. If you want to be a young person who is able to make your way in life, or an older person who continues to make your way in life, or someone who pours into a young person in the way we talked about earlier, you need to be able to articulate and be an apologist for, not to apologize for, but to be an apologist, which is someone who can articulate and explain why you believe what you believe. And you will be amazed at how little it takes. How little it takes for you to defend your faith, your worldview, your appreciation and respect for the sanctity and the dignity of every single human life. It doesn't take a tremendous amount to be able to make the case clearly, cogently, and to change people's minds. You will see it happen in the course of a single conversation. Because most people have the emotion, then they have the anger, then they don't want to talk about it. But if they're still listening after those 3 phases of liberal argument, which is to be emotional, to be angry, and to not want to talk about it anymore, if they're still there having the conversation, you're winning, number one. Number two, you have the ability to transform minds in powerful ways on this issue and others as well. So be bold. I want to back up a little bit, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you about my life and kind of how I came to this point. People are gracious to say the things that they say about me and my approach, and I seem like I'm willing to do these very things I'm asking of you, and indeed I am. But I'll tell you what, the large reason is because I'm blessed by the life experiences I've had. I know with absolute conviction the things that I'm saying to you, I believe to my core. This isn't something, Lord knows, and any of you who've been around the political front, and many of you have for a long time, these are not the kind of things that are considered good political chatter. They're not. This is not political opportunism. But I'll tell you what, as surely as I answer to the ballot box, as do others who run for office, I am as absolutely confident that I'll answer to my Creator someday, and I'm a whole lot more interested as to what I hear that day than I am on what I hear on any day after an election. I can tell you that right now. And here's the thing. Not everybody agrees with me, and that's all right. I mean, the point is, maybe it's not all right, but that's reality. My job isn't to beat people over the head, but I'm not going to apologize for what I believe any more than I would expect somebody to apologize for what they believe. But if I do believe what I believe, then it's my responsibility, I believe in many respects, to make the case for what I believe, as it is another person's as well. So I was raised in a fairly large family. Again, by Northern Kentucky standards, this would be like your first 5 years, but I was one of 6 children. And so as one of 6 children, interestingly, the first 4 of us did come along in 5 calendar years, so we were off to a good Northern Kentucky kind of a start, but then my parents faded out. They had them after that, 1 every 5 years until they got 6. But I was the second of 6 kids. But in the early 1970s, when the abomination of, which literally, and truly, I use that word not facetiously, not flippantly, Roe v. Wade was an absolute abomination of the Constitution of the United States of America. It really was. And the whole idea that you needed to find, the whole idea that you needed to torture out some kind of ridiculous excuse that even by itself makes no sense. Penumbras and emanations. The penumbras and emanations, what the blazes is that? Nothing. It's gobbledygook is what that is. That's what judges say when they know that the law doesn't support them, so they make stuff up. And that's literally what happened in 1973. Nowhere in the Constitution, by even the farthest stretch of someone's imagination, does the right to kill another human being exist. It doesn't. Period. And yet, starting in 1973, this was the law of the land, as we are often told. So too have been other things, by the way. And this idea that, well, we should all, those of us in this room and people who believe, well, we should all keep our mouths shut and, hey, it's been settled. It's the law of the land, and, that's just the way it goes. So too was Dred Scott. Now, think about this. So too is Dred Scott that said people of color, people who were African American and other minorities were not even human, that they did not count to be counted even in censuses as a full human being, that they were the right to be owned by other human beings. This too was the law of the land. The same Supreme Court determined that to be the case. But guess what? It was rooms full of people like this. It was states run by people like this state and others where they just said, we're not going to take this. They became what were known as abolitionists, and they became abolitionist states and towns and people on Underground Railroads who simply said, this is reprehensible, it should not exist. Human beings are human beings. They're created in the image of God, regardless of, as was noted before my own Kentucky home, the ethnicity of people doesn't matter. It doesn't. And so too, there were people who just simply said, we're not getting off of this until we do the right thing. This nation of America can still do the right thing and stop killing unborn children, and I believe that it will. And I think that pendulum is starting to swing back, but our job is to be convicted with such a sense of urgency that we don't take our foot off the gas, that we boldly go forward and demand nothing less. We've got to. But in this early 1970s, 72, 3, 4, as this was coming into law and becoming the law, and there was this sense of like, what's going on? And I guess, well, what aw shucks. One of the very first and most vocal people about how wrong this was my mother. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. My mother didn't grow up in a faith-filled home. She didn't go to church. There was no faith-based background to her life at all. I'll tell you, this is something I've not shared with a lot of people. My mother was a young mother with 3 little kids, a 2-year-old, probably a 3.5, I guess, let me think how old we would have been. Probably like 4, 2, and a newborn at the time this conversation happened. And my mother was in a health food store in Colorado in the 1960s. So if you don't think your faith can make a change in someone's life, my mother, who had never gone to church, had no faith-based background at all, was in a health food store in Colorado in the 1960s where you could get a whole lot of things, but one of them wasn't typically spiritual advice of the type that she was given. But there was a woman that happened to be in there who saw her, and I'm guessing, as a mother with a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn, trying to buy peanut butter out of a 50-gallon tub or whatever she was doing, that she was probably looking a little tired, and probably, knowing me, I was probably putting my hand in there and taking it. I mean, seriously, I probably was. I might do that even now, I don't know. But anyway, probably not, but I might. But point being is that here's a woman who saw this tired woman with all these little kids and said, I think this woman needs to hear about the love of Jesus Christ. And you think about that. Now, she could have just said, I hope someone talks to her. I hope somebody prays for her. I'll just say a little prayer for her. It was noted a moment ago, and it's true, the power of prayer is an extraordinary thing. As was noted earlier, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe it. But again, how badly do you believe it? How much do you believe it? It's an extraordinary thing. But this woman took the time to talk to my mother, to tell her that there is something that you might be seeking and not even know. Turns out that was the case. And then just a few years after that, here's my mother, having just recently become introduced to the whole Judeo-Christian principle that many of us perhaps take for granted. And my father, in like mind after her, and now these 3 little kids, now 4 little kids, and then 5 little kids, actually, right about the time that this was coming into play. And so when this verse first passed, the first Right to Life chapter that was formed where my family lived at that time in northern New Hampshire, which even to this day and even then is a fairly agnostic part of the world. It is. It's just, you mind your business, I'll mind mine, and that includes everything, spiritual and otherwise. Just the way it is. Very European in some respects, maybe because they've been there a long time, I don't know.